Hey everyone, it's Kenji. I'm going to show you something you can make with leftover steak. So I had dinner by myself at the bar at the Metropolitan Grill the other night. The Metropolitan Grill is like the old school steakhouse in Seattle. They make excellent steaks, dry aged, really good stuff. And I got a Delmonico for myself, which is way too big for me to eat on my own. A Delmonico, it can be different cuts, but theirs is a bone-in New York strip, cut from sort of near the ribs. It was 24 ounces, way too big for me to eat on my own. So I brought leftovers with me. I got a medium rare. You see they nailed that temperature perfectly. This is what I like to do with leftover steak. I find leftover steak is much better when you don't try and reheat it. It's just better when you leave it cold. Whether it's in a sandwich or whether you just sort of slice it in the middle of the night, put some salt on it and eat it, it's better when it's cold. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little salad with steak and cucumber and ponzu, which is a Japanese sort of citrus and soy sauce, a little whole grain mustard, some shallots. You'll see. Steak. I find a steak to be almost better when it's cold. So, it's good when it's hot as well, of course. But when it's cold, I find it, especially when you sort of slice it really thin, it has a really pleasing texture to it. Oh, by the way, you might notice this. This is interesting. The first slice, the part of the steak that was exposed, it's really red like this, right? And then once you get to the deeper parts of the steak, it's kind of purple. That's because the pigment in steak. I'm going to trim off some of this connective tissue. We don't want that in our steak. That connective tissue, like sort of the sinew. I'll just save the rest of that. Here, come on. So in steak, in meat, there's a pigment called myoglobin, which is similar to hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is the pigment that is the molecule that carries oxygen from our hearts to our muscles. In muscles, in the muscles themselves, there's a similar pigment called myoglobin. And normally myoglobin is this kind of, when it's exposed to oxygen, it's myoglobin, and it's this sort of reddish color. When it's deprived of oxygen, sort of on the interior of a steak, for example, it becomes deoxymyoglobin, which has this purplish hue to it. And when you when it becomes very exposed to oxygen, if it's been, say, sitting out for a while, cut steak has been sort of sitting out for a while, a piece of meat has been sitting out for a while, it'll become metmyoglobin, which has a sort of brownish hue to it. So depending on how much oxygen exposure your meat has, it can range from sort of purple to red to brown. All of them are just fine. They are that color is not a sign of the quality. So sometimes people ask me, oh, if I buy a package of ground beef at the supermarket, sometimes when I do that, the outside looks red, and then when I get into the middle of it, it looks purple. Are they? They'll ask, oh, are people? They must be dyeing it at the supermarket so that it looks a better color. No, they aren't dyeing it. What they are in fact doing is, well, in some cases they will be just leaving it in the package as is, with the oxygen from the air. In which case, the exterior will be myoglobin, the pigment myoglobin, reddish color, and the interior will be deoxymyoglobin, the purplish color. Sometimes what they'll do is they'll fill the exterior of the packaging with a neutral gas, so something a non-reactive gas like nitrogen, right? And when they fill it with nitrogen, whatever color was there to begin with is the color that it's going to stay. So if it was nice and bright red and they fill the container with nitrogen, nitrogen is, of course, makes up 70% of our atmosphere, so it's perfectly safe. It will stay red. It won't turn into metmyoglobin. It will not turn brown. That's why, I think that's what sometimes people mean when they say, oh, they dye your meat. Really what they mean is they put them in a controlled atmosphere, the same way we do to divers and astronauts. Anyhow, that was my tangent. That took up some time while I was putting steak on a plate. So nice and thin. Use a really sharp knife, nice and thin. Arrange it on a plate. I got this cucumber here. I'm going to not bother taking out the seeds because I don't feel like it today. But also sliced really thin. If you want, you can use like a mandolin or something like that for this. You can also use a Asian cucumber, which might have a sort of slightly nicer, less watery texture to it. It will have fewer seeds. I'm just going to lay this across the steak. I'm doing this a kind of fancy way. If you want to make like a fancy appetizer at your next dinner party, you can just take your leftover steak from the restaurant the night before and plate it up like this. Cucumber. All right. I'm going to slice some scallions as well. Really nice and thin. You see when I slice scallions, I kind of pull backwards through them. I don't know if you can see it. I'm going to pull backwards like that. That does a lot less, so you're looking for more of a slicing motion as opposed to a chopping motion. And when you slice backwards like this, you'll end up with sort of nicer, cleaner slices of scallions than if you just kind of do this, crunch up and down. You can even hear the difference. Like this makes it kind of, I don't know if you can hear that, kind of crunching noise, and that's the sound of cells being crushed. Whereas this makes more of a shh, very silent shick, shick, shick. And that's the sound of cells being nicely sliced as opposed to crushed. So you get better texture and better flavor when you do it that way, because you're not releasing as many of the lacrimators, the compounds that cause a scallion or an onion to make your eyes water. You can see the difference here also. Sort of these are kind of crushed up scallion bits, and these are nicely sliced scallion bits. All right, finally what I'm going to do, and call this episode, How Much Can One Guy Talk While Making a Real Simple Salad? I'm going to take some water. Throw an ice cube in there. Throw my scallions right in. That's going to help them curl up a little bit, get nice and crunchy. They don't get crunchy because they're cold. They get crunchy because they absorb a little bit of extra water. And so just the same way that like a inflated bike tire is much firmer than a deflated bike tire, scallion cells, vegetable cells in general that have water, that are filled with water, will be firmer than those that are not. All right, finally I'm going to make my dressing. It's time to address the dressing. Got a little bit of shallot going on here. Okay, I'm going to start by slicing across this way. Then we'll do we want to really fine dice in this. You don't have to, you don't have to do it this way like the fancy restaurant style brunoise mincing. You can just you can roughly chop it and then just rock your knife over it if you want. But if you do want sort of really nice looking, clean tasting little cubes of shallot, this is the way you do it. And again, you can see I'm not chopping up and down. I'm not keeping my knife planted and just going up and down. I'm actually sliding it back and forth. You want a lot more sort of translational motion when you're slicing things, especially alliums, as opposed to sort of up and down motion. That should be plenty for now. That's going to go into a bowl. So this dressing, you can use store-bought ponzu. It's going to start with a ponzu base. I'm using a sort of cheaty ponzu. You can use store-bought ponzu and it'll work just fine. But ponzu is essentially a Japanese citrus and soy sauce sauce. Often used for like shabu shabu. So it's often used where you take shabu shabu, which is thinly sliced meat that you dip into a hot pot and then dip it in this ponzu sauce. It's made basically equal parts soy sauce and citrus juice. Yuzu juice or sudachi juice is common. I'm using yuzu juice. If you don't have that, use lemon juice, use lime juice. You can use a combination of lemon, lime, and grapefruit. Really, whatever you want. Or you can use a combination of citrus juice and vinegar as well. All right, so equal parts citrus juice, mirin, which is a Japanese sweet rice wine, soy sauce. And if you want to make this sort of the real sort of traditional way, you would then add to this kombu, which is a seaweed, sea kelp, along with katsuobushi, smoked, fermented, dried, shaved bonito. But instead of that, I'm going to just use hondashi, which is powdered dashi, and add it straight into here. So what you would do is you would take that katsuobushi and the kombu, put it in here, let it steep in the fridge overnight, and that's how you get your ponzu. But I'm just going to add some hondashi, which is kind of like, it's the equivalent of like, what like a chicken bouillon would be versus real chicken stock. All right, and that's our basic ponzu sauce. This is really delicious with just dipping meat into it. Got a nice combination of acid, saltiness, umami from the soy sauce, and sweetness from the mirin. But I'm going to make this into a dressing now. This is where we go a little off the rails. So I'm going to take some whole grain mustard. I'm eyeballing everything, but I would do roughly 2 parts each of soy sauce, sake, soy sauce, mirin, and yuzu juice, as well as 1 part whole grain mustard, and then about, say, 4 parts oil. I'm using a really nice, this is where you want to use your nice extra virgin olive oil. This olive oil comes from my friend Damien Primus, who lives in New York. He started a olive oil importing company about a year ago, and they import, mostly, he's Greek, so they mostly import from Greek islands, really good extra virgin olive oils. But this year he put out this olive oil from, I believe it's from Peru, Tacna, Peru. Really nice and peppery, an excellent olive oil. I would recommend it. I'll leave a link below if you want to try it out. All right, and that is our dressing. Now, all we got to do is plate it up. Give this a taste first. Oh yeah, that is delicious. Little pinch of salt. All right. And now let's spoon this dressing overall. This dressing, it doesn't matter if it's broken, emulsified, you know, this is not like a vinaigrette. It's okay if the olive oil kind of breaks out. In fact, I think it tastes a little bit better when the olive oil breaks out because we're not dressing salad greens, we're dressing meat. The reason you want a emulsified, or you typically want an emulsified vinaigrette when you're dressing salad greens, is because the coating on leaves, on plant leaves, is hydrophobic. That is, leaves are very good at repelling water. In fact, they have to be, because otherwise trees and plants would turn soggy and collapse every time it rained. So you don't want that. So plants are very good at repelling water. And vinegar obviously is mostly water. And so if you try and dress a salad with just vinegar or a non-emulsified vinaigrette, then the acid parts, the vinegar or the citrus juice or whatever it is, the parts that are mostly water, will run straight off it and fall to the bottom of the bowl while the oil clings. That's why in a salad, you want your vinaigrette to be emulsified. Meat, on the other hand, will absorb either oil or water-based liquids just fine, so you don't really have to worry as much about properly emulsifying. All right, I'm going to finish it off with some scallions here. I'm doing this like this. If you want, you know, you could make this all into a true salad. You know, I think this would be great if you put all these ingredients in with a, say, into a salad bowl with some arugula, tossed it with more of that dressing, so you had the steak salad with the cucumber and the scallions and the steak with some greens. That would be delicious, but today I'm just going to have the steak on its own. Let me grab a couple of, let me add a pair of chopsticks here. And I'm going to finish it off with a touch of flaky sea salt for the crunch and the flavor. Cold things, by the way, typically you can use more seasoning than hot things. Cold things taste a little bit flatter than hot things, and so adding a little bit of extra salt to them is generally a good idea. And a few cracks of pepper. You could use black, I'm using black pepper. You could also use something like togarashi, you know, like a chili, Japanese chili pepper. And there we have it. What do you think? Does that look good? Let's try a bite. That's so good. I mean, I especially love this olive oil. The olive oil has a really long, lingering, peppery finish to it. A little bit of bitterness. You know, some people, when they first taste like a really high quality extra virgin olive oil, they'll think it tastes sort of extraordinarily bitter or sort of really astringent, like something that kind of burns in the back of your mouth. And that's true. When you taste olive oils, really good olive oils on their own, they do sometimes burn the back of your mouth. That's because we don't normally eat olive oil just on its own. We eat it with other foods. And so that little burning on the back of your mouth, sort of the finish of the olive oil, it balances out a lot of flavors. And it makes sort of the flavors stick around in your mouth for longer. I'm going to end up eating this all. No, I'll give him one a piece. All right, let's take the onions off there. Here you go, buddy. All right, everyone. Steak and cucumber, leftover steak and cucumber salad. This recipe is from Serious Eats, by the way. This recipe is from Serious Eats, by the way. I published it many, many years ago. I will leave a link below, and it's completely free. All right. If you want to, I started a new channel, Kenji Lopez Main. That's where I do all of my eating and dining content. You can check it out. I'll leave a link below. I also started a Patreon. I don't take sponsorships or do in-video ads. So the only way I'm supported is through you buying my books. So if you want to buy my books, you can. I'll leave a link below. If you want to support me on Patreon, you can. I will leave a link below for that as well. Otherwise, enjoy. Guys, gals, non-binary pals. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.